Hey everyone, this is how you can start a song on GarageBand. This is a very basic tutorial for a beginner. I've been doing this for years, so you can sub this channel to help me out. That would be great. I'll teach you some good stuff, give you some value. So we are going to open the GarageBand program, go to New Project, just pick an empty project here. It's your very first time doing this, and you have to choose what you want to do. Now you can blend all of these elements together. That's not difficult, but for starters we're going to start with the most basic thing, is getting a melody and a rhythm down with a software instrument. Unless you have a microphone you already got plugged in, you probably know what you're doing. Click on that one instead. If you're more advanced, you'd be plugging in a guitar or a bass with an adapter to your USB. That means you have most likely a 1/4 inch going into your guitar or bass or other instrument. Then that 1/4 inch will go into a USB adapter, which will plug into your Mac. And we're not talking about recording drums analog here. We're talking about a digital drummer if you pick that one, which is a lot of fun and easy to do. So probably for starters, we're going to do software instrument and drummer in this lesson. Let's start with software instrument, and I'm going to do this without even a keyboard plugged in because you might not have one. But in a more advanced lesson, we can look at what it's like to have an actual keyboard plugged in. All right, and the nice thing is those keyboards, sometimes you don't even have to plug them in. They run on something called phantom power. That's called phantom power. We'll learn about that later. Now that you have GarageBand open, you can see a lot of things going on here. How you can start your track just by clicking play or stop, right? And the space bar will do the same thing for that. There's the space bar. Go forward and backwards. You can also start recording by hitting the record button, and I can start playing on my keyboard. Right, so I just did a basic C chord right there. And what that did is that put notes right onto the track for classic electric piano. Now let's have some fun. Let's try something else, such as we'll change that to phasing bells. So see how I clicked there, and all of a sudden it changed it, and I can go back to electric piano if I want. And if I want to have some fine tuning, I can double click on the instrument here, and this control panel shows up at the bottom. Now I can even play with all of these effects that are connected to the Flying Circus piano, and it's going to sound different. Actually, it sounds so faint you almost can't hear it. So let's turn up the volume on that. Okay, and you're also hearing the tick of the metronome in the background. You probably don't need the metronome for starters unless you really want to work on syncing up your sounds. In order to sync up your notes, let's suppose your notes go in and they're going in, I'll just say the word disjointed, but I want them to start at the very beginning, right, of my song. So now I just dragged them back to this little 0 mark, I'll call it. Now as soon as you start playing this song, if I burn it to a CD, as soon as the song starts, you're going to hear these notes. All right, and I'm able to see where I'm at here in time by changing this from beats and project to time. So this lesson is going to be kind of all over the place, it seems at first, but just stick with me here because it's going to make more sense as we go. So now I can see how far along I am in my song, just with that. Those are ticks, those are seconds, those are minutes. So I guess there's 900 of 1,000 ticks in a second is how you look at that. Let's go back to beats and project to make it simple. So we're in a 4/4 count, so notice how that changes our numbers up here. If I take the slider and stretch this out, I can get a better view of the track. So now if I put in more notes, let's just play something here. All right, so now I basically played over almost 4 bars. And those notes are going in really nice and fast now, right? Well, suppose these are, I want them to sync up exactly right on this ruler, so there's no change in, or there's, you know what I'm trying to say. We're going to go back to piano roll here. You can look at the score later, even though I just showed it to you right now. See how I highlighted all these notes? I can now do something called quantizing. Now, if you have no music theory experience or no training in music, this is not going to make a lot of sense, but you can start to get the gist of it. But I can adjust this to sync up with 1/8 of a note, which I just did right there. If I want to undo, I can do Command-Z. On the Apple computer, Command-Z will undo that. I can go to 1/16 of a note, Or I can do any of those other time frames, and I can also just drag the notes right where I want with the click of a button. So there we go. All right, and I can turn off the metronome again just because I don't like the sound of it. It's kind of annoying to me, although sometimes I play with one. And then let's say I want to increase the tempo. I can just drag and slide this up, or I can double click and type in a tempo I want. I think it goes all the way up to 200 beats per minute. Let's try that. There it goes. Guess it goes even higher. Anyhow, I thought it used to be 200. Okay, so that's how that works. Now let me show you what you can do in this basic lesson to make your instrument sound more interesting. And we're going to basically layer a piano on top of a piano in this case. So we already had the flying circus and we had the classic electric that we looked at. So let's try duplicating this track. So I can go to up here and I can do new track with duplicate settings, or I can do Command D, right, which is the shortcut for that. Get good at your shortcuts. That'll help you speed up a lot. It takes time to memorize them. So I'm going to Command C, copy, and then I'm going to click on this track, Command V for paste. Now I've got the same notes overlapping. And you could do a lot of interesting things with this. And this is actually going to finish up the lesson here. So we have an electric piano and a flying circus piano. They sound quite a lot the same. But what if I change one of these to phasing bells? Now you've got two instruments overlapping. That's really interesting, but you can mute one out and see what they sound like individually. There's the soft sound of the flying circus, and then there's the louder sound of the phasing bells. Now we'll don't want to mute both of them, but we'll bring them both up. And if I click this one, it just solos that. It would take out all the other ones and make this one solo. And now if you want to dig into your library, you can go to All Sounds and you can see a lot of other things you can play with. Let's just try this one, Edges and Angles. Let's see what that one is. So we open this little chapter of the library here, and now I can go to, golly, let's look at Arpeggiator. Let's see what we got in here. Synth Basics, Rising Waves. Okay, I just changed this track now to something called Rising Waves. Do you see what I did there? So it arpeggiated all the notes, which is the sound you're hearing. Those are called arpeggios. It arpeggiated my notes, and I have it synced with the flying circus. Now that's really interesting. Almost sounds kind of sci-fi, and it did a lot of work for me by arpeggiating those notes. I didn't have to do that myself. And then if you want to experiment with your new sound and really fine-tune it and have it loop, see what I did there? I clicked on this loop button, and now it highlights just this area. So let's keep it on the 4/4 to make it work better. I can start adjusting these knobs down here, such as resonance, cutoff, attack, ring mod, whatever that is. I'm doing this, I might just solo out the rising waves, right? And you know what else I might do? It's really cluttered with all of those different notes because that is an arpeggio. It's like basically an arpeggio right there. So if I want to have a really noisy song, you would have a lot of notes and then arpeggiate on top of that. But I don't want that. So let's just try, like, we'll do a C, and we'll do a G, and we'll go back to C. Let's just put an F in there. So we'll do C, F, G, C. Here we go. So that's what I just did in less than a few minutes here. And if you think about this, you can overlap some drums, you can add some bass. We'll get into that in the next lesson, but this is just a basic lesson to teach you how to get up and running, even if you don't have a keyboard to plug in. In this lesson, we actually learned how to change instruments. We learned how to quantize your notes on your timeline and move notes around on the piano roll. It's pretty basic stuff. So if this helped you out, give it a like and a share. Thanks a lot for watching, and stay tuned for the next GarageBand tutorial.